the second session for you, who's going to be uh, Bala is going to be delivering this session. Bala is part of the NICE community team, and Bala comes with about 25 odd years of experience covering, has experience around product strategy, investments, and has helped many startups across the world grow and scale. So welcome, Bala. Super excited to have you today and hear your presentation on pitching the business idea.
Can you hear me as well as see my screen, Arvind?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great. It's funny to be on this side of the table because I'm typically sitting and moderating speakers. So today is my turn, I guess, to deliver this. So let's get. I know we are slightly behind, so let's just get to the topic. I think Vinod really gave us a very good rundown on how to raise fund, what are the different classes of investors that you would look at, how do you raise money, what do they look for, and etc. and all that. In the next session, we will primarily focus on I mean, now that you've identified your investors, how are you going to pitch, right? So how do you pitch a business idea? What do you say when you are pitching an idea, and how does a good presentation look like? I'll probably finish it in about 25 minutes and then take some Q&A, and probably we'll be able to wrap it up before 6 o'clock. With that, or rather, I think it's 5:30 or so, right? Is when we were supposed to wrap it up, maybe 10 minutes later. I don't want to discuss this particular slide because Vinod did spend quite a lot of time in this, in talking about different kind of different classes of investors. But just to say, I'm still showing this slide for maybe 10 seconds, primarily so that you can understand some of the key differences that Vinod brought out. Number one is at the angel and the seed level, what we call as the angel and the seed, somewhere between that. Primarily, your investor is betting on people because there is not much of a traction in your business. There is not much signals that the investors can evaluate your business on. So they just look at you and they say, can this entrepreneur, can I trust this entrepreneur? Can I bet on this entrepreneur? And that's primarily what the main focus of your pitch also has supposed to be. And then as you start having a product, and maybe the product is you have the product in the market, but it's not like your product is been there for a long time, you're not making a lot of money. What we call as the validation, product market fit, is not yet there. At the time, they look at your innovativeness of your solution and they bet on that, right? So they look at not just you, but they look at you as well as how innovative your solution is, what kind of problem you are solving, and is it really a good problem, and is your solution a good quality solution? And they will give you money based on that analysis, because they do have some signals on the product also, and maybe a little bit of traction there, right? So that's what we call as the seed level to about Series A, Series B of VC investments, which actually come in there. And then the third, the third one is once you are already validated, you have good traction, you can show a lot of customers, and you're looking for money to scale your business. Then they bet on the market. What market are you in, and is that worth betting on? And they kind of look at the market signal and they give you money on. So the reason I'm saying this is because even your pitch will change depending on where you are, and then you have to tailor what you say based on different stages of the funding that you are trying to get money for, right? So keep this in mind as we kind of create a pitch. I know that most of Aarohana listeners are probably in the first segment, which is primarily they are either a concept or a prototype or have a product and a little bit of traction, but may not have massive scale. So we are probably going to look at the pitch that is needed when an investor is looking at the team as well as the product for making an investment decision, right? What qualities do they look for an investor when you are looking at a team or if you are a solopreneur, then what quality do they look for in the entrepreneur? There are, there are many qualities, and I'm just kind of talking about few here. And if you were to see, there are hard skills on the right-hand side, and there is soft skills on the left-hand side. And some are mixture, like, a combination of hard and soft in the middle. And the hard skills are something you can measure, right? Or something you have a proof for, which is your experience, which is your industry expertise, your ability to execute. These are something that you can show that you have done in the past in some other context. It could be in some other context. So if you have 15 years of experience in a particular industry, that shows your experience and your expertise in that particular industry. Or if you are a designer by profession, that shows that you have the expertise because you have the, you've done a course in that, or if you've done you've done a degree in that. If you did work for some other designer in your past, that shows your experience as well as your execution. So it's very important for your investor or anybody who you're trying to pitch. By the way, when I say we are talking about the word investor here, but you will pitch your business not just to investor. You'll also pitch it to your partners. You will pitch it to your future employees, and you will pitch it to your customers. You'll pitch it to maybe on competitions, or you pitch it to government, different stakeholders, right? So your pitching is not just to one stakeholder. Investor is only one stakeholder. But having said that, of course, when you go to the investor, the context is raising money. When you go to the customer, the context is for them to make a sale. And if you're talking to a future employee, the context is for them to believe in your vision and then join you. And if you're talking about a partner, the context is to combine together and kind of create momentum. So the context changes, what they look for changes, but overall rubric in terms of how you approach it some of the fundamental things are what we are talking about. So number one, when you think about projecting yourself, and if you have a concept or a prototype, and if you're talking to an investor or a partner, they do not, the concept or a prototype is hard for them to believe in. So they will look at you, is this a person who can actually create this and make it into a big, company or a business? Then they would look at, do you have these hard skills that is needed to make it successful? So which are some of those hard skills are that on the right hand side. Then you look at something in the middle that talks about your leadership, your vision, and are you actually coachable? If you are, this is one of the very, very critical qualities that an investor looks for, is that while you may have confidence, right? Are you coachable is very important. Even if you were to think about confidence, having confidence is good, but overconfidence is bad. So you have to be able to be humble, willing to learn, willing to accept when you are wrong, willing to be open to learn from others' experience, and that's what is coachability. And they look for that. Do you have mentors? Is there somebody who is mentoring you, do you have a strong sense of purpose and vision, and do you have leadership qualities? This is something that they will look for. And on the softer side, and I say it as a soft skill because it's hard to demonstrate or show proof of these skills, but you would have to make sure that they get a sense of your integrity, your passion, and your perseverance. And primarily it's around in the way you interact with them, right? So how the way you speak about your business, is there a backstory for why you are picked up this particular business that shows your passion? Are you willing to persevere? Because almost 100% of the businesses will go through ups and downs, and more downs than ups. So the investor or a partner or a customer is actually looking at you. Are you going to run away when you are going to be in trouble? Are you going to stick and then ensure that you will face all challenges that you will get are in front of you, and still be able to stick through and deliver? And will you say what you do, and will you do what you say? And that's your integrity. So these are things which are very critical for you to ensure. I expect you to create a PowerPoint slide and say, I have great integrity and I have great passion. That just doesn't work, right? So a pitch now, another interesting part here is that a pitch is not a PowerPoint presentation. A pitch is a full package. A pitch is what is on the presentation, how you are delivering, your own personality, and your actions. All of it is a pitch, right? So you won't be able to, demonstrate your perseverance through just saying, I have perseverance, right? So nobody will believe you. So you have to show it. Some of this you have to show it in action. Some of it you have to show it in your body language and your personality. And some of it, obviously, it's easily measurable, objectively measurable. You can demonstrate that. So keep in mind that it is a full package, not just a presentation. A lot of people think that they can do fantastic presentations, and they come to me and say, look, I've got a great pitch. And I say, what about you? You have to be part of the pitch as well. So who's going to deliver? How are they going to deliver? And what is their personality? And what is their conviction of what they are saying about the presentation? All of that matters as well. So you have to keep in mind that these are the things that you are taking care of. Just to go by what Vinod said in the previous presentation, if you walk into a very serious investor meeting with chappals on, like, he did use that word, with chappals on, what personality are you, kind of demonstrating there? Is that a question that you need to ask? Maybe that's okay, right? But it should not look like you are overconfident. It should not look like you have a lot of ego. It should not look like you are not coachable. Then these are big red flags for anybody to believe you and trust you and join you. Now, every pitch, now that we come to that, every pitch has few elements, right? So, and then that slowly builds the what I call as the pitch arc, which means on the left-hand side is a stranger. You're talking to a stranger. And by the time you get to point number 6, you're talking to a believer, right? So you have to convert a stranger who does not know you, who does not know what you do, to someone who believes in what you do and wants to help you. Help you by either giving you money or partnering with you or canvassing for you or promoting you or becoming your customer or becoming an employee, whatever that is, right? So pitch can be for everything else. There are 6 steps that you need to simply follow. And for each of you, it'll be different words, but I'm just giving you a rubric or a framework here, and you have to kind of apply that in your context and then try it out. What is the first step? When you open your pitch, the first thing you should talk about is the problem you are solving. First is, with anyone, before they believe you, they need to connect with the problem that you're solving, which is the raison d'etre, which means like, why do you exist, right? So why should I even spend my time talking to you? Is because you are solving a problem or you are creating a opportunity. And you could look at it like, if you think there is no problem that you're solving, but you're creating an opportunity, you could say, this is the opportunity I'm trying to create. But you are giving them a reason for why they should care about you, right? And when you talk about the problem, there are 2 types. One is like, nice to solve kind of problems, and some are must solve kind of a problem. There is also another example that we use that is called vitamins versus painkiller, which means each one of us wake up in the morning and we have hundreds of problems. I still live with a lot of problems every day in and day out. So human beings by nature know how to live with problems. Okay. So, but we don't end up solving all the problems. We end up solving only the burning problems, right? So something it's a splitting headache. You have to take a pill and you have to address the problem, versus, you have to take a B12 vitamin. If you if you forgot to take today, and it's not like sky is falling on your head. It's okay. You can skip it for a day and then take it next day, right? So therefore, the vitamin is a nice to have, and it's not like we should skip on vitamins. That's not what I'm prescribing. But all I'm saying is there are 2 classes of problem, and you have to keep in mind that the class that you are addressing here is that it's a very important, need to be solved. It's urgent and it's critical problem. These are 2 attributes that you have to really showcase in the way you present the problem. And the second aspect is, when you talk about the problem, talk about a human in the middle, right? Humanize the problem, right? So don't open up and say, oh, I can make you, $100 million, right? So that I am not going to believe that, right? So you have to first tell me what problem you're solving and who is this who's facing this particular problem. So take a human being, take a persona of your customer, and then walk me through the life of that person and tell me why that person faces this problem and why is this problem important for that person to solve. This is the human story that you need to first deliver. And if you do not deliver this powerfully, the rest of the steps, like the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, will all collapse like a pack of cards. So this is very important, and I will spend a lot of time in just emphasizing that particular thing. Do not go to step number 2 unless you are very sure that you have convinced them that this is a very important problem to solve, and here is the person who facing the problem, and we should care about this person, right? So once you do that, then the next step is you kind of zoom the problem out and say it is not about just one person's problem, but there are millions of people who love to solve this particular problem. So this is where you are kind of telling that it is not a single person's problem, but it's a generic problem faced by a group of people, which is a cohort of people, which is your what we call as the addressable market proposition, right? So you're saying this is not just faced by someone here, but it's faced by everyone who has a need for this, right? Like, for example, if you go to say, if you're in wellness space, you are coming up with a organic solution for, let's say, diabetic situation. You say, diabetes is a slow killer, and diabetes is a lifestyle problem, because it is not that there is no solution for diabetes, and people get progressively bad, and then the cost for themselves as well as for their family is very, very high. So you are creating the human angle of the problem. Then you are saying it's not just one person, but if you were to look at India, India is probably the diabetic capital. There is 100 million people who could be diabetic or maybe maybe at risk for diabetes. So that's the next step that you're getting into, right? So once you establish that this is not a very important problem for your target customer to solve, and there is a large enough addressable market for that, then you introduce your solution. So this is where you start to talk about what is your product or what is your solution, right? What I have seen, most of the pitches just skip through the 1 and 2. They just don't spend enough time with the problem. They just directly go and say, hey, here's my product, and I want you to buy it. Now, this is a huge mistake, and it comes from your personal ego perspective. It does not come from your customer's point of view. And the reason is you are excited about your product and your solution. So you want to talk about that first, right? So you skip over it because the problem is in the back of your mind and you think everybody understands it. But you need to step back and you need them to slowly absorb the problem and the scale of the problem and the criticality of the problem before you unfold what you are preparing. How are you solving it? And why should they care about your solution per se? Why not some other solution, right? So you have to then introduce that part where here is the solution that we have prepared, and our solution is different from others in the market. And here is how we are different. We are, better quality, different design, better efficacy, better throughput, or whatever that is your selling proposition. You start to, and better technique, maybe, right? Better technology, any of that could be part of the solution. But you are starting to explain the solution only in step number 3, right? But we're not done yet, right? So I'm now convinced that it is an important problem to solve. And now I'm convinced that yours is a good solution, but I still am not fully convinced. Why? Because there are 3 more steps to go, right? So the 4th step is we have proof. And the proof is the traction. What have you done so far about it? I mean, you can say we have already, 3,000 customers who have bought my product and they are happy. Here is the review of the customer, and there are so many people are buying it again, right? Or if you are in a concept and a prototype stage, here is a prototype, I'm patenting it. And so it shows the seriousness of not only your solution, but also the fact that it should convince the listener audience that your solution has traction and is a winnable product or a solution there, right? So that's very much important. Pick whatever proof points you have. Either you have a design patent or you have you have serious manufacturing capability, or you have fantastic number of partners, or you may have fantastic number of customers, you have presence in so many cities. All of that could be part of the proof that you can. This is a demonstrable proof, right? Now it is a proof of the pudding. Now then you are almost close in terms of convincing the audience about what you are doing, right? And the fifth one is tell them what you are planning to do. And this is where, for example, for investor, it would be an ask for an investment. Now you are saying, look, this is a great problem to solve. We are the right people to solve. Here is where a proof that we are our solution is working. And here's what we plan to do. Right now we are in one city. We want to go to 10 cities. Right now we have one product. We want to build 5 products, right? Or right now we are doing it for this customer and we want to go to few more other customers. Any of that, that's the plan. What is your plan to be successful, right? So here's where you show the plan and say, I have proved it and I want to do this other thing based on the previous success or the proof that I'm showing. Now comes the ask. Now you are asking for their commitment. And that is the 6th step. Now is when you say, I want your help. We can do it together. And here, if it is an investor, you say, I want $1 million and I want you to join me in this journey and let's do it together, is what your ending note of the pitch art will say. If it is a partnership, then you have to say, I want to partner with you and we can do this successfully together, right? Or if it is, if it is an employee, you say, we are a great company, you need to join us and we can do this together. Any of that, right? So now you can see the pitch arc helps you define a framework where you can take this and build for different contexts. Right. So now that we got the storytelling arc, now let's look at the components of the story or the pitch, right? So number one, you start, like I said, you start with a singular problem. Start with a persona of the individual that you are trying to solve the problem for. And here you have to cover a few things. And this is, why is this problem important to the user? It's very important for you to cover that. Why is it urgent for them? Is it a vitamin or a nice to have, or is it a painkiller, which is very urgent that they have to solve for? And is there any latent motivations? Like, for example, is there any inertia for them to move over to your solution? Or does it require a incremental change from a user's life, or is it a disruptive change that you are introducing? Any of that, right? So you need to cover all of this. Second is, you need to scale this problem and say it is not just for one person, but it's for a market. How big is the market? How do we know the problem will scale to, you have solved it for 100 people, but how do I know it will go to 1 million people? And how do you know how do we assess that market? That's the couple of things that you look at it. And how are you solving? The third part is, when you get to this third step, you say, how are you solving this particular problem? Will your solution scale? Is it sufficient? Does it have any entry barriers, right? Or how are you uniquely positioned to solve this particular thing? How do you describe your solution in a simple manner so that people understand? And what business are you in? These are the things that you have to cover in the solving your product and solution introduction, which is step number 3, right? And then how is it being done today? Like, for example, is someone else, how are they doing it today? How are they solving, it's not like they're sitting in the problem, they are doing something about it. What are they doing right now? Who's your competition, right? So it's not just competition, direct competition, it could be a substitute. And why are your competitors not doing it? And what if the competitors copy your product, right? So what is your defensibility against that competition? And then coming to your team, how do you know what is your background, expertise, experience, coachability? We discussed this earlier as well. And then you talk about your traction. And in the traction, you talk about your customer references, your partnerships, how much users are there, how much revenue you have, how many people are signing up, how many people are renewing it, how many people are leaving your service, and things like that, right? So anything that, and how many cities you are in, any of that traction would also work there. Then next is how are you going to market, right? So what kind of partnership is needed? What kind of channels are needed? Marketing, sales, so that your investor can understand, what does it really take to be successful, take to successfully scale your product or solution. right? And then what are your funding requirements and how much money are you asking? What are you going to do with the money? What is your current burn rate? And after you take this money, where will you reach? So that I know that you are going from one good place to another good place, and you are not burning through right in the middle, right? So that's also important. And what kind of risks and assumptions are you making, right? So what assumptions are made in your plan? If those some assumptions are some of the risks, what are the risks you are making in the plan, and how do you plan to manage those risks, right? What are your fallback options there? These are things that you have to include in your pitch. Please don't tell an investor that you have made no assumptions. Please don't tell an investor that there are no risks. Nobody is going to believe that. So you better be honest about the risks and put it out there and talk about it, discuss about it. Investors are willing to take a risky bet provided they know what are the risks. So they don't like an entrepreneur who comes in and says, oh, there's no risk at all. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense, right? Now, I don't know how much time we have. Okay, I'm just going to skip through it very quickly. You need to keep the interest level on the positive side, and there are few things that keeps the interest level of your listener on the positive side, and there are few things that will reduce the interest level, and you watch out for it. Number one, logically progress. Like I said, do not skip the steps. The pitch arc that I talked about. Don't go from 1 to 3 and 3 to 5, or suddenly start with 1 and all. Don't be too jumpy. Just go through it methodically and logically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because if I were to go back one, just say a little just here, people won't believe 2 unless they believe 1, and people won't believe 3 unless they believe 2, right? So these steps are cascading into each other, right? So if you start from 3, you will set yourself up for failure because you haven't you haven't convinced them about 2 and 1 earlier. So I would recommend, even if they say, oh, no, I understand the problem that you're trying to solve, let's just directly get to your solution. You tell them, can you please give me 5 minutes so that I can present my view of what the problem we are trying to solve is. And always start with step 1 and go to 2. You can spend, you can spend reasonable, you don't have to overkill it, but do not cross without, do not jump the stages, right? The second thing is, always try to relate to the audience. Always try to relate to the investor. What does investor know? Then you connect to that point. Like, you say, by the way, I know that you have invested in the other company and we are very similar to this. And when you say that, you are in a familiar territory. Investor thinks that, oh, okay, you are very familiar to me. You're not a stranger to me. They don't like strangeness. They don't like surprises. So the third one is ask for validation, right? So after you explain the problem, get some feedback. And ask them, hey, what do you think about it? I mean, do you think this is a important problem? Do you agree with me? Or they could say yeah, yes, no, or maybe they can qualify. But what this does is you're taking them along with you in the journey. They are not suddenly just you talking all the time. So these 3 things are very positive. And things that you should not be doing is things you obviously know that is not true. Do not lie. And things they don't understand. If they don't understand, you should stop and make them understand, and don't throw things that are complex to them or unfamiliar to them, right? And the third thing is do not make them kind of get confused, or do not make them think too much and say, well, I don't know what he's saying. May is too super smart, but I don't know what he's saying. You know what? If they think that you are super smart and therefore they don't understand you, you are not going to get that money, right? So they need to understand. So the whole idea of a pitch is not for you to tell them how smart you are. The whole idea of a pitch is make them understand that this is a great journey that they should join, right? And the fourth and the fifth are very hygiene, like, never say one thing in one slide and another thing. Even today, I find a lot of pitches make this mistake, simple mistakes. They say it's 15% growth rate in one slide, in another slide, they will say 23%. I mean, this is unnecessary. Unfortunately, it will absolutely create red flags. You don't want that. And finally, please make sure, be professional. Please make sure there are no typos in your slides, and you can answer all the questions. All right. Now, with that, let's move to how many type of pitches are there? And in my experience, I mean, you could have, this is not a gold standard or anything, but I have seen 4 duration of pitches, which will work very well. And you need to prepare, and a good presenter or a good entrepreneur creates these 4 different slide decks, right? In fact, for the first one, you don't need a slide deck, but they do create one too, right? So the first one is what we call as an elevator pitch, which is what I call as a 30-second pitch. You need to be able to tell your story in just 30 seconds. Obviously, you cannot cram a lot of things, but you got to leave them with wanting to know more. That's the whole idea of a 30 seconds pitch. 30 seconds pitch purpose is not to sell your story and get a check. 30-second, pitch's purpose is a teaser. It's a trailer, right? You don't want to show the whole movie there. It's a trailer which should make the audience think that, wow, I want to watch this movie. So the 30-second pitch job is to get you time for 1 hour pitch. So it is doing a sales. In 30 seconds pitch is selling, but it is not selling your product, not selling your need for investment, but it is selling a need for asking them for 1 hour time, right? So that's how you should kind of look at it. It's a very quick narrative. You can only do what problem you're solving and for whom you're solving. This is all you can tell in 30 seconds, right? So literally one statement which says, we solve this problem for this person by doing this. That's it. That's all you can tell, right? So, and I would encourage all of you guys to prepare this, sharpen this. You can keep changing as you understand your market, your customers better, as you get more feedback, you will keep changing this narrative of what does this, there are 3 blanks there, right? So we solve blank problem for blank person by doing blank. So these 3 blanks need to be filled, and you will see it to be tremendously useful exercise to actually fill this up and then try it out with different people and keep changing, wordsmithing it and all that. And then you see some 4-minute pitches, and typically I've seen the 4-minute pitches in business plan competitions and in a group format. When you are in a group, you will get a little more attention than 30 seconds. And immediately the moment you say, we solve blank problem for blank person by doing blank, they will say, oh, you know what, can you tell me a little more? That means you are now in a 4-minute zone, right? So then you have that ready, and the 4-minute zone expands it a little bit. It says what problem you are solving for whom, which is covered in the 30-minute. You explain it a little bit. How will this problem scale, and how big is the market? And you explain a little bit of your solution and your overall vision. These are the 4 things you cover in your 4-minute pitch. I would say instead of overall vision, you want to replace it with your traction. Like, we are already in 5 cities and stuff like that. That's also great, right? So that really builds a lot of credibility. And frankly, once you have some traction, you should lead with traction. All right, we have a solution for this particular problem, and we are serving 10,000 customers, and nobody can refute what you're saying. They automatically, a lot of credibility is built. Lead with traction once you have traction. Since most of you may not have that much of a traction, I'm saying lead with the human story, then scale it, then tell your solutions, and then slowly build it in that manner, right? So then you go into the 20-minute pitch, and this is one of the one-on-ones, or 2 people, 3 people to sitting in front of you. Then you would typically have a presentation with about 10-12 slides, and with each slide covering one of the key points that we talked about. Again, go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So that's how you construct your pitch. And 1 hour pitches with extra details and extra slides for each of the key points. For example, in 20-minute pitch, you will say the market potential, we have analyzed it, we have used this methodology, and it's about $20 billion, or $2 billion, whatever. And then in a 1 hour pitch, you would actually explain how did you arrive at it, right? So you don't need to do that in a 20-minute pitch, correct? So it's not about you're cramming a lot in 20-minute pitch. Each one of those pitch should feel relaxed, right? It should be relaxed. I don't want you to, just because you have 4 minutes, you don't take a 20-minute pitch deck and then cram it into 4 minutes. They will never go well, right? And if you do not have any of this pitch, I would recommend that you start with a 1 hour pitch, because 1 hour pitch is the most elaborate one. And then from there, you condense it to 20 minutes. From there, you distill it back to 4 minutes, and then you bring your 30-minute pitch. So you start from your journey from there, and then you condense it. Don't do the reverse. It's not the right way of approaching it. All right, so we're almost at the end. 5 more minutes and I'll stop. There are some tips. At the angel stage, the investor is funding you, so be very authentic, right? So I would rather, as an investor, and I know there are many investors here. Sanjay is also an investor. We all look for authenticity, genuine. Are you genuine is very important, which means it doesn't matter whether you have answers to every question we ask or no. Even if you do not have the answer, just say, I do not have the answer. Without your personal credibility, even the best pitch is useless, right? So I have seen people getting money with a crappy, no animation, no images presentation, because the person was genuine, and the person is you are the hero, right? So when you are doing the pitch, so that's very important for you to remember. And then you do when it comes to vision and execution, they have different yardsticks, right? So like, for example, vision needs a lot of belief and execution needs a lot of credibility. If you remember, the hard skills it requires a lot of credibility. You need to show, I've come from this college, I've done this kind of experience, I've worked with this kind of designer. That type of experience is credibility, builds credibility. And your vision needs to come through your passion on the soft skill side. That's a lot of belief that's there. And we spoke about this already. Focus on problem longer. Okay, so focus on the solution shorter. Without selling them on the problem, your solution will fall flat. So don't go to step number 3. First, tackle step number 1. And then the next one is, a lot of people, when I ask the question, hey, what are the entry barriers for your business? They say, oh, there is no entry barrier. And that's such a naive answer. There is always an entry barrier. If anything, the user's inertia is an entry barrier. Okay, so remember this and actually, think about it and bring it out in the front and tackle the question. Don't say there is no entry barrier, which just only shows your ignorance, right? And also remember what entry barriers are you creating, right? So entry barriers for you as well as entry barriers for others to copy you. So there is you'll also have to think about it, because most of them will think about defensibility, and how do you create the defensibility is very important. You should think. Many people also do not think about that. Then articulate your risks and assumptions. We spoke about it. Always articulate your risk. There will be risks, there will be assumptions. You better state it upfront, which will only build your credibility. Overconfidence, it's a fine balance. You need to be confident, that's for sure, but you should also be able to change your opinion and be willing to learn and listen, right? So, and avoid all these superlatives. We are the biggest, we are the best, we're going to kill the competition. You really don't need that. Nobody will, first of all, nobody believes it, and you don't need to use those. It's unnecessary noise, right? And when you go to a meeting, do some research about the person whom you are meeting. Get to know them. I mean, it's very easy these days to get to know them. You either go onto their Twitter handle or you go to their LinkedIn page. You know where they are passed out from. There may be some mutual friends and contacts. They might have worked in some companies that something. It just creates common connection if you are able to know them and their work and which company they are in. For example, if you're meeting a VC, you should know who else is there in their portfolio, how big is their fund size, how long back did they raise their money, who are the partners, right? And have they been in the news for anything in the past? Or what did the partner write about your particular, what is the partner's views on different industries and things like that? I am so surprised that people just walk in blind thinking that, oh my God, I need money and these guys are going to give me money without doing any of these preparations, which is, in my opinion, a very, very immature approach completely. If you know you're going to talk to someone, you better know about them. That shows respect, that shows professionalism, that shows your preparedness, and that increases your chances. Frankly, a lot of people have just got it just because they were prepared, right? So even though their pitch was weak, the fact that they walked into the meeting with so much of preparation, knowing what this company is all about, about who else has been funded by them, and etc., raises your credibility a lot. And finally, investor is in it to make money. So do not dramatize your goodness. Like when we talk about the first one about the problem, yeah, you say, you're helping people, you're saving lives and all that. It's good, but it has to make economic sense as well, right? So you have to show the path to the money, and you don't dramatize. I am in it to just save people and save the world only, right? So that's a little bit too hot for anybody to fund, right? Even in the case of someone said, in the earlier one, I can't give 5x returns. It's not for you to decide how much of return you're going to be giving. It is for the investor to decide, but there has to be a return, right? Please don't go and say, please fund me because I'm changing the world and I'm saving the world. That's not a great story. You can change the world, but you also need to return something, right? So nobody wants to just do that. It's not philanthropy that you're shooting for. Even in philanthropy, you should show some sustainability of the business. Otherwise, it just doesn't work out. Make it and then make it human, make it a story that's worth listening to, right? And and then create an ask. Even with an investor presentation, you can actually ask them, how did it go, right? Would you be willing to put some money here, or will you be able to recommend me to somebody else, or refer me to somebody else, or introduce me to somebody else, right? So remember, you can always ask people, because once they hear your story, everybody would be open to helping you or do in some angle. If you go to the investor, if he says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you money, don't say, oh, okay, thank you very much, and then walk away. Ask that investor something. Will you be able to, in your network, connect me to someone who you think this would resonate with? There is nothing you're losing, right? The maximum that person will say is, no, I don't have anybody. But you may be surprised. They will say, actually, you know what, let me think about it and I'll come back to you. See, you've created an opening there, right? So these are the things that I will stop here. So my ask from each of you today is that make a list of people you need to pitch to, then create different time scale pitches, the 1 hour pitch, or the 20-minute pitch, and the 4-minute pitch, and the 30-second pitch, and pitch it to 10 people, right? They should be supporters who but don't pick your mother and father, because they will never give you critical feedback. They will, even if they want, they will overlook all the risks and everything else, and they can't ask you hard questions, right? So, and don't go to your friends. Go to people who are known to you, but you are not so close to you. Then they can give you critical feedback, because they don't have a skin in the game in the relationship. So they won't overlook it. So you tell them also, be critical and take the critical feedback, and then improve your pitch. Then make a list of all the objections you're getting when you are making to these 10 pitches, and prepare your answer and keep the answers ready, because this will prepare you for that. Practice your pitch a lot. I think unless you are really good in public speaking, you practice your pitch many times over. That builds your confidence. And finally, like I said, create an ask. Never end your pitch with, what do you think only, but also say, how can you help me, right? And if you can actually ask them, say, this is how you can help me, will you? That's even better. With that, I'm going to stop here, and thanks a lot for listening to me, and we'll see if we have any questions and answer them.
Thanks, Bala. We have questions, a couple of questions, and the first question is from Bhavna. How does one establish that the audience has fully internalized the problem or the opportunity mentioned in step 1? And the following question is it by inviting verbal engagement via vote, dialogue, or body language? And we need to adapt. What are the things that we need to adapt at the end of the day, at every stage of building the presentation for the audience?
Ask for feedback. That's the best way. Pause. One of the things is we don't pause. I've seen many people are in verbal diarrhea. When they start the pitch, they are in a compulsive speaking mode. I think one of the reasons I ask people to practice their pitches, be comfortable in a pause, right? So when you are, once you have made a statement and say, this is the problem I'm trying to solve, pause, right? And the moment you pause, you'll realize you're giving an opening for the other person to say something, because everybody hates pauses. So if you pause, somebody else will speak. And even then, if you have a poker face, then you can ask them, what do you think? Have you faced this situation? Do you know someone who has faced this situation, right? Never ask a question for which the answer is yes and no. Ask a question which is open-ended so that they have to explain, right? For example, have you faced what in your experience, what do you think this problem can mean, right? You cannot answer it as yes or no, right? So you have to say, if you say, do you agree with the problem, the person will say yes or no, right? Can you tell, does this happen to somebody else? Have you faced any experience? I would love to listen to any experience that you have had in your past, who have had this kind of problem. Now I have to think about a person and then do it. So you're making me connect with you. So pausing, asking open-ended questions are very important to get validation.
Okay, we have a question from Ritu Parna. How do we talk about differentiation factor for the handloom and handcraft sector, as there are more number of players?
More number of players are not you need to stand out. That is your problem, correct? So you need to know what is it that you are creating, which is unique about you. Don't worry about no more number of players. You got to be able to stand up and say, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm creating, and this is unique, and this is the problem I'm trying to solve for this person. That is this is what you should focus on. Don't worry about, oh, there are others also doing it, so what will I do? Right? That means it shows that you haven't really dug deep in your own self to understand yourself, your motivation, as well as you understand your customers well enough to be able to articulate how you are doing this. I mean, what problem you are trying to solve, right? So, and market is never static, okay? Market keeps changing, which means your customers' expectations change. For example, with COVID coming in, our behaviors are changing. Suddenly we are operating in a very different way. You need to be able to find a hook that you are trying to solve for, right? And then that opens up that particular opportunity.
Okay, we have another question from Ameya. My business can be highly profitable, but not in terms of revenue growth rate. Would this interest a VC, or what kind of investors would this interest, and how do I frame my investment proposition?
Well, I think number one is that we need to I don't understand why it is profitable but not growing, right? So we need to understand. It could be your own assumption. A lot of times you are in the blind spot, right? Because as entrepreneurs, while we work hard, we figure out certain things that is working for us, and we don't want to let go. So we just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And you are in the weeds, right? When you are in the weeds, you can't see the big picture. So first thing I would recommend is, if you're profitable, I would recommend that you get a mentor, some advisor to help you understand why your business is not growing. So I don't agree with your statement that your business is not growing. Maybe it's not growing the way you are operating today, correct? So for that, you need to kind of pull yourself a little back and look at it from a different perspective and figure out growth opportunities. So that's number one. First statement is that, it may be growing, but you are not just looking at it from that angle. I've been in that position. I've been many times entrepreneur, and I have been in the same position. I get stuck. When I'm getting stuck, it's like being in the middle of a traffic jam. I can't see the big picture, right? Maybe 100 meters down, it opens up. But at the place where I am, it feels like it's all jammed, right? So we all go through that. So think about that. That's number one. Number two, you may have to, there are professional VCs, right? And professional VCs also different classes. Some VCs are called impact VCs. Arvind, what's that? OMDR network is, for example, or Dell Foundation. These are impact VCs. They look for some return, definitely, but they look for impact more than the return. So you have to go and target such investors, right? Number two, there are many angels who are very happy to invest in a profitable but slow growth businesses and slow risk. When you say slow growth, I'm assuming that it's also low risk, because if you have high risk and slow growth, that's a very very dangerous combination. But I am sacrificing growth for less risk. If that is the case, all I'm getting is I may want dividend out of it, right? So there are many people who just want to park their funds in a safe place, which may not grow very fast, but it also does not have the risk and has returns. And if you're able to return, have yield better returns than their bank accounts, you've got a story to get their money, right? So you got to match. It's not about, number one is you want money, but number two is when you ask money from someone, what are you offering to them is a big question. And you may be offering very valuable instrument for them to invest in, right? If and there are many people whose risk appetite is not that big, you can go to them and then talk to them about this.
All right. So I'm going to just pick the last two questions, Bala. The question is from Dr. Shilpa. Essentially, is the pitch a broader version of Lean Canvas? Comments?
No, it's not. It's not a broader version. Pitch is a story. If you use your, open up your Lean Canvas in a slide and show it to them, you are very lazy, right? Don't make them think. Lean Canvas is for you. Lean Canvas is for you to understand how you are, how you think about your business. You have to convert that into a story, because I'll tell you an example. The first stage is explain the problem. It's not a Lean Canvas approach. You have to tell a human story there, right? You have to tell a story of one of your customer who is facing that particular problem, and then you have to expand there. So it's not a Lean Canvas. They don't meet. However, a lot of the work you have done in the Lean Canvas can go in as an input in creating the pitch.
Okay. The last question is, once you've pitched and the presentation went on well, and if the investor says, let's continue the discussion, what is the best way to follow up, and what's the best way to follow up with investors? This is a question from Ajay.
Great question. Never, every investor will say this, never, get up from your seat until you get the date. You've got to have a date and an action item, right? So the action item is not, let's continue this discussion. The action item is when, right? So your next question to that is, when? Can we pencil something in our calendar, right? So, and it's a song and a dance. A lot of people say, I know you're trying to, trying to get commitment out of me, right? So I would try to get away from the commitment. Say, let's continue this discussion. Let me think about it. These are the questions these are the statements, but they are blank statements. You need to have a time to it, correct? So when you say when, that's fantastic. Why don't we pencil something? Would sometime next week work for you? Take some time, and sometime next week work for you. Could be Monday, it could be Tuesday, it could be Wednesday. And the guy says, you know what? I don't have my calendar in front of me. Why don't I think about it? I will tell you when. You know what you'd say? Oh, okay, that's fine. Look at your calendar. Can I call you tomorrow to get the time when we can sit again? Right? So never let this go. Okay. So you need some takeaway for yourself, which is meaningful and tangible. So that means tomorrow you can call. You're asking permission for you to reach out to this person tomorrow. You've made this person commit to you that by tomorrow you're going to tell me when you're going to continue this discussion. Make sense? You got to be a little hard-assed, unfortunately, but that's because you need this more than this. You see, you don't owe anything to any investor. You owe to yourself, right? So you got to tell that I owe to myself that I need this meeting to be meaningful and valuable for myself. So entrepreneurship is very hard. Let's not make it even more hard by just indulging other people's fancy.
Sure. On that note, thank you so much, Bala, for taking time and walking us through this very interesting presentation. With this, I'm just going to present you guys the following session that we have next week. This session is going to be, we have two AMAs. One is going to be on food and beverages. We have a next session on 13th of January. It starts at 4 p.m. It's going to be with two veterans in the food and beverages industry, Conrad and then Desmond, sharing their thoughts on food and beverages. This session is going to be moderated by Bala. The second session is going to be on the sales and fashion industry. We'll have Aditya Kitru and Palaksha sharing their insights and how to grow the business in the fashion industry. And this session is going to be moderated by Sanjay. Thank you so much for attending this session. Look forward to similar kind of participation from you guys. Stay safe. See you guys next week. And like you guys asked for the presentation, I will be sending you guys the email with the decks of both the presentations.
All right, thanks guys. Have a good weekend.
Yep.